Now, when you look at, so let's talk about light and color. We open up color profiling. So how do we manage this in the software? It's called color profiling. Your typical color profiles, again, correspond with either CMYK or RGB. Typically from Photoshop, again, to recap, it goes to RGB. Now what happens is, when I'm mixing light, I'm going to get a different color than when I mix those other colors, CMYK. You can read through that. Now, the key thing about this is right here. The CMYK model is based on the light absorbing quality of ink printed on the paper. Right? So the color that I'm trying to emit from my computer screen will never, ever, ever, ever match exactly when you print it to what you see on the screen. Right? Because one's emitting light, the other one's being printed. Now we use color profiles. Right? It's basically a hardware code that comes with most printers that basically feeds back to machines and reads the machine language, so the machine can read the color profile, so that way you can get within about 3 to 5% of what your actual color is, and that's on a good day, right? When there's like literally humidity in the air will change the color that gets printed on a printer. It's gnarly what I used to have to manage this stuff. It's gnarly what you have to do. What also affects people is look at the color of the lights above us, right? How many different colors of white do I see out of the light bulbs? Different colors of white. So there's 4 different light colors of white on the basis to be emitted. And you're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you're seeing all 4 in here. There's 2 new ones in the back. Okay. So that means if my printed color is based upon the light that is reflected off the surface of the paper, and I have different colors of light bulbs, wherever I go, if I stand here and look at a document under that color of white, the color is going to look entirely different than when I come over here and look at it. So this is why it's important to make sure when you change your light bulbs, you change all of them at the same time, especially in an architecture office. Right? Does that make sense to everybody? Maybe we'll do an exercise in that. And I haven't touched like these guys to see if they're matched up yet. Seriously? Okay. Anyways, so just be aware of that. That's why we always print in here. The poor man's way of color management, right, is going in every week, taking a Pantone color chart. Everybody knows what Pantone is, right? It's like this industry standard for like color mixing. And so remember Pantone, we talked about that last week, right? And going and actually printing that week what my colors are printing, right? And saying, okay, I have a client meeting. I need to make sure my colored elevations match this paint swatch. So I go over to the chart and see what the printer is printing. And I say, okay, that looks about right. And then I go into my document, I change the color to match. That's the poor man's way of doing it. Then you're guaranteed every time. Seriously. Man, I feel like I'm in a bar and somebody just got tipped. Jeez. Anyways, so again, there's the graphic illustrating the color mixing values. Now, color gamuts. So there is a way within the software to manage what is happening with the color, right? So there are certain colors that will just never print on a printer. So how do I visualize that? So let's go back to Photoshop here. Again, you're just watching me for this particular set. A lot of what you're getting today is like the information, and then you will do the actual exercises. So let's go ahead and I'll open an image here. So I'll open up this beautiful rendering I did a long time ago. $5 more. Nice to be part. Anyways, so to view this, and I'm sorry, my screen's cracked. I can look at this, and if I look at the color space, right? So talking about color space, I can go ahead and I can look at my color settings. So a good management procedure basically syncs up all the computer softwares within the Adobe suite, and it's done through Adobe Bridge, actually. If you ever want to set up your own system, you can pull me aside and we'll talk more about setting that up. But generally speaking, right, I'm in the color range of sRGB, which is standard Photoshop. I'm using my CMYK, so it also knows where am I going to export this to, where is my intended profile. Both profiles will get stored with this image, so that way it can be handled both by digital viewing. So this is our color settings, that's how you edit it. So just be aware that if you're having issues, a lot of times you'll pull, so I'm pulling an image, right? I'm trying to set up finishes on a finish board or something like that, and I'm pulling it from a website. So I right click, I save it down from the website, I'm going to use it on my color board. So when I open an image from the internet and I go to print it and it looks kind of weird or whatever it may be, or all of a sudden I have one image that, you know, even though I took them from basically the same place and they should look the same on the screen, right? I have like Sky 1 and Sky 2, right? And they're not printing the same, like the blues look the same on the screen, but the blues are not printing the same. Go into Photoshop, open the image, and chances are there's a different color profile associated with that. So when we're doing our renderings and things like that, we always, generally speaking, when you do a rendering out of 3ds Max, it does not come with a color profile. That's why we go to Photoshop with it and we assign that color profile to it at that time. This, obviously, it's already been processed in Photoshop, so it has a color profile to it. It has US web coded CMYK. So this US web coded under the CMYK, when I pull this down, typically speaking, we're in the United States, so this is the United States profile. What it's saying, right, is I have sheet fed coded, sheet fed uncoded, US web coded, US web uncoded. So what do you think the coded and uncoded refers to, if we're talking about printing? Paper type, right? Bonded paper versus glossy paper, right? What is my intended output of this? Typically speaking, you're going to get, even though I have a red, that red is going to look differently on a glossy piece of paper versus a printed piece of paper. So it's managing this idea of a color gamut. So a color gamut, right, is the range of color that I can get out of a specific type of color defined by the color profile.